Hey everyone, how you all doing? I really love having these conversations when people decide to just knock on my door, walk in the door, and they say, "Hey Gerald, what are you doing?" And I go, "Nothing. You want to have a chat?" So today, let's bring him up. Let's do the old split screen here. Laurie Bowman, how are you, Laurie?
Going very well. How are you going,
This
Gerald?
is really interesting. How am I going? I'm doing well. This is really interesting because when you walked in the door, I remember the name Laurie, and I remember that we might have done something maybe, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago with either Boeing or Sedgman. How long ago was it, and who was it with?
Oh, it was actually 11 or 12 years ago with Sedgman. Yeah, negotiation training.
Oh no, I was doing the negotiation training.
That's right. Yeah, you were teaching us negotiation
What
training.
was I, about 12 or something?
Yeah, about that.
And I think after that we kind of like connected because I really liked your style. And I think you were clean shaven and I was clean shaven and we all had long hair and everything. But I liked your style about how we, I think connected. And then we met maybe, let's go, maybe that was 5 or 6 years ago when we met in Hurston and we did some sort of podcast together. What was that? What was that? The Point TV or something?
Yeah, the Point TV. We did an
Right.
interview with Point TV.
And you wanted to be you wanted to get up there and tell me how much of a genius you are in your specific field. We need to talk about your specific field. This is one of the hardest things I ask. I'm like a HR manager here. You know, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? But who are you? Like who is
Who am I?
who is Laurie Bowman?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'm still trying to figure that out myself, to be honest. But I guess I'm just somebody who, who's trying to make sense out of the world, like most of us. Sees a lot of valuable things in human beings and nature in general, and in the way we all connect together, and sees tremendous opportunity in helping other people also see that light and be the best version of themselves.
That's a lot to uncover. You know,
Yeah.
be the best version of themselves. Your background though is in engineering.
That's right. Yeah.
So the difference that I see between, say, like yourself and myself is that I am ADD. So I'm totally attention deficit disorder. This is going to be hard for me because you're very focused as an engineer.
Yeah.
I think, it's the gag that I have about an engineer would be something like I would see the glass half full, a pessimist would see the glass half empty, and then the engineer would say, "You've got the wrong size, you've got the wrong glass." Something like that.
Okay.
But as an engineer, what are you seeing out there? Because I want to talk to you about a few things. I want to talk to you about authenticity. I want to talk to you about leadership and maybe talk to you about ethics. If there's such a thing within the engineering world. So as an engineer, what are the failings or the human failings that you see when it comes to managing a project from today to end?
Oh, that's a really great question. I'm glad you asked that one. So that's one of the biggest challenges with projects that we have these days is, helping people, human beings. We all have weaknesses, and there's a number of different biases that tend to exist when we're executing projects, and projects are really human endeavours. And there's a huge opportunity for engineers to improve the outcomes from projects, because as engineers we have ethical obligations. Whereas people who aren't engineers there may be self-interest involved, or there may be other sort of factors. But with engineers, we have ethical obligations to do the best things for the community, the best things for our clients, and the best things for our environment, so that we're really considering the needs of future generations as well as the needs of current generations.
So you're a consultant now. So you used to work for, like I think I mentioned Boeing, and then you went to Sedgman, and then you worked for Engineering Australia. I think you had a lot of roles, but you're now a consultant. Why did you transition? Why did you think, look, I need to get out of being an employee and I need to start becoming self-employed, which is it's always the greatest move in the world, isn't it? Let's be self-employed.
Well, that was the feedback from the world, is that I'm unemployable completely.
Right.
But to be less cynical, I learned a heck of a lot from the roles that I had. Very lucky to work with some amazing companies like Boeing, Sedgman, and a few others as well, and found that I learnt so much. I could see so much value that I could offer to the engineering construction industry, for example, that I'd worked in prior to having roles like the ones with Sedgman and Boeing, that I could offer back, that I could, in small doses, share my valuable insights deliver training programs and certification programs, which I'm involved with, to help uplift the capability of others. So I felt by doing that, it would be a really good use of my time, and I could deliver a lot of value to different companies in a short amount of time.
I love it that you're using some of these buzzwords like lift the capability. Does that mean that we were incapable or not capable? Because I want to get into the specific field of engineering that you're in, and why this people part of it is really important, because engineers don't see themselves as being, I'm going to, is this part going to be cut out? But I don't think engineers see themselves as being people orientated. They're more so systems orientated. And yes or no? No.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah, so we like to think that we're very objective in the way we make decisions and those sorts of things, and we apply critical thinking. But the reality is we all have biases and we all have different flaws in our decision making. It's just part of being human. And in today's modern world, this VUCA sort of environment where everything's very volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, the sort of projects that we're doing are becoming more and more complex. And as human beings, we've got this we've evolved to have this sort of way of solving problems. A lot of it's unconscious. We do it automatically. But we haven't really evolved from a history of doing these very large, complex projects. So it's not something that comes natural to us. So it's very important for us to put some guardrails in place to help us make the right decisions and get successful outcomes from projects which are very unique, and they're not something that we've done throughout our evolution as human beings.
Because I love it that you said, we've all got our biases. I have mine, you have yours. And I think the problem is, or maybe a challenge is that what do you find is the biggest barrier to punch through to what it is that you want to do? So if I was to ask you, okay, you're going to go into an engineering firm, or you're going to talk to Engineering Australia, and you got an opportunity to speak to them for 90 minutes, what would be the thing that you would like them to sit back and go, that's a great message?
Okay. Oh, really? So it's definitely the value that engineers can provide, particularly so the amount of change that we're dealing with in the world at the moment, with the proliferation of technology, the climate change challenge and sustainable challenge. So it's almost like a new industrial revolution where we don't just think of financial outcomes, we need to think of social outcomes, environmental outcomes, as well as financial outcomes simultaneously. So decision making is becoming more complex, and there's a lot of actors out there in this field who are deciding what projects we should do and how they should be planned and developed. There's a huge opportunity for engineers to play a leading role in that field. One, because of our technical capability, so our ability to deal with complexity, our ability to integrate systems, our ability to deal with cybersecurity. So our technical capabilities make us well suited to it. But the other thing is this ethical foundation we have as engineers in Australia and pretty much around the world, these sort of obligations to be doing the right thing by the community, to be considering sustainability, to be telling the truth, to be acting with integrity. So it's this amazing combination of technical capability as well as ethical obligations that positions engineers very well to have a leading role in shaping the future and guiding which projects, which systems we should be looking at for the future and for the community.
But I think it's like most people, we all have faults. And do you think that most of the engineers that you're dealing with are too stuck in their way and they don't want I don't know why you laugh all the time I say this, because I'm speaking from a layman's perspective. Get this right, because I'm on one side of the spectrum as to where you are, but I'm thinking that most engineers would be saying, I don't have faults. I'm very critical. I'm very logical, systematic. I'm very exact. But you mentioned a word in there that I think we need to maybe unpack a little bit, which is that word ethics. Is that something that's lacking in the engineering world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there was quite a few layers to what you said there.
Yeah, let's go.
So yeah, all of us tend to be stuck in our own ways, and engineers are not an exception to that. And I think it's common if you have a technical field that people might specialise in, that there might be some sort of silos that get built up around that. But certainly there is more of an opportunity. The projects that we do, the sorts of things that we do as humans are becoming more and more integrated and complex and connected with different areas. So as engineers, it's very useful as engineers or project managers for us to become adept at breaking out of our silos, having an open-minded approach to things and an attitude of continuously learning rather than sort of setting in our ways. Ethics, it really sort of comes to the fore of that, because one of the pillars of engineering ethics is the effective communication. So making sure that we're communicating effectively with impacted parties as well as taking in new information. So it really is a core part of that sort of ethical approach, that we have an open mind. We recognise when we're dealing with something that we may not be competent in. We welcome other people's opinions. We listen to people. We engage with impacted stakeholders, for example.
Can you give me an example where maybe an anecdote where it's actually happened, where you've gone in, had a talk, you've sat down with a group of people, and you've said, okay, this is what we need to focus on. More so than just finishing the project, we need to do it, in the correct way. We need to show leadership skills. We need to be authentic about what it is that we're doing. We need to have ethics, build an ethical program around it. Have you got someone, without mentioning names, that you would look at and say, this is where it's worked? I can tell you unequivocally that when you've spoken to them, that they've put some of these processes in place and then said, this shit actually works, man. That's a really good question. So unfortunately, there's a lot more stories of failure that come to mind, but there are definitely some success stories. So one that comes to mind recently is I've had some not so wonderful dealings with government around policy and things like that towards engineering projects, but one that was really positive was in India, they have a Ministry for Statistics and Program Implementation, which is a pretty unusual name for a ministry. But Ministry for
Statistics and Program Implementation, which it sounds unusual, but it's actually a really good fit, because there's a lot of opportunity for us to make better use of data to make better decisions when we're implementing infrastructure projects.
Sounds fair, yep.
So a wonderful ministry. But I'd done some work in India, and I got an invitation to come and meet with this minister, along with a number of other colleagues from the US, Qatar, India, somewhere else, but there was Saudi Arabia. There was quite a range of us who'd come together to meet with this minister, and I didn't quite know what to expect. The cynical side of me was wondering what sort of a political charade it might be, or some sort of a dog and pony show or something like that. That we got there and we met with this minister, and it was completely amazing. We had a workshop, and the workshop involved him coming in and telling us all of the problems and all of the challenges that he was dealing with on his portfolio of projects. So he had a very large range of infrastructure projects he was developing, and he also had a community where he knew that there were some pretty serious challenges in terms of, he had ambitions to eradicate poverty and provide basic sanitation to a number of areas and things like that. So his complete intention was to gradually improve the capability of his team and his delivery agencies to deliver projects, so that if he could just shave 2 to 5% of the costs, it meant he had all of this extra budget that he could then use to do some of the other projects that he wanted. So his complete intention was to become more efficient and effective and productive in the way they delivered projects, so that he could be more effective at eradicating poverty and providing basic services to his community. So it was quite interesting to hear him say that, and all he did was share his problems, which for me was unusual, and then he asked us to give him advice, and then all he did was sit back and listen. And so the five of us then sort of sat around probing, asking questions, found out a little bit more detail, and all he did was listen. He didn't tell us that he knew more than us. He didn't sort of overrule us or sort of dismiss us. All he did was listen. So it was a remarkably inspiring experience to meet with the politician, to see him behind the doors, to see him be so authentic and have such positive intentions, to share his problems and then to listen to us the way he did. It was just an amazing experience, and I found myself coming back here to Australia, and it just had broadened my mind so much to the importance of making sure that what we do, particularly when it's public money, but with all projects we do, to make sure that we're getting maximum benefit we can.
Is that unusual for a person to sit back and just listen? Because I know if I was to give you a list of my challenges and I say, here's the issues, people won't listen to what I'm saying, people won't implement what I'm asking to do. And then you come back with maybe a series of milestones about what it is that I might have to achieve. My natural reaction, being in my own business, would be to give some pushback and also to go, a bit of like that below the line behaviour, blame, excuses, denial. Oh, Laurie, you don't understand. You don't understand. We're a country of 2 billion people. It's not as easy as just shaving off 2 to 5%. But in that way, did you find that it was unusual for a person just to sit back, listen, or did you think he was falling asleep in his own eyes, where he wasn't listening but was kind of like going, "How do I handle this?"
I thought he was. I thought he was completely authentic. What I couldn't believe, so I was expecting a leader like that to tell me how amazing and perfect everything that he'd done
Right.
and the incredible achievements. Instead, he said, "Here's all the." So he was very reflective and self-critical, saying, "Here's all the areas where I'm failing. We have all these landowner issues, trying to procure land. We can't do this. We can't do that. We have no capability." So it was refreshing hearing somebody open the door so that we could give him some guidance and suggestions, and gave him a report that hopefully has helped him.
I don't know if this is, it's not racist, but do you think that's the difference between the Eastern culture and the Western culture, that maybe the Eastern culture is very open to just listening and the Western culture is a bit like, I know best?
Yeah, it may be. It's hard for me to say because I haven't had that many experiences. So I don't know whether it was just this one particular individual who was very open-minded and engaging and that sort of thing.
But you're going back over there again, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So I go to India very frequently. So I'm working with an engineering construction company over there, Larsen and Torbro, to deliver training on project risk management. Yeah. So I haven't been dealing with government so much since that opportunity. I know the team, the engineering team that I connected with over there, I think they still do some work with government over there as well.
Can we talk a little bit about ethics? I want to get a little bit deeper into organisations that are doing things that are just quite unethical. You can see it, I can see it. Where do you start? Like, let's just say you got an invitation to go into we'll use a government organisation for now. You see from being a layperson sitting back, you can see that there are some things that you're just going, it's pretty unethical. That they're not showing any leadership qualities, but they've asked you to come in. Do you already start with tell me what your challenges are, tell me what your thinking is, tell me do a 360 feedback loop, what do you think of that person and their leadership style? Where do you start? How do you get them to open up?
So the first thing to do is to, as you suggested, ask them what their perception of their challenges are and speak to as many people as possible. So it's useful to get the leadership perspective as well as talking to the engineers, the people on the ground, to get both perspectives or 360 degree perspective.
But how do you know that what they're telling you is either just I'm following the company line, or that there may be one person who's the rogue person that says, "Hang on, what are you?"
Yeah. So it's all information. So that when people give you the feedback, it's their perception, and it's also a reflection of how safe they felt in sharing information.
Yes.
So psychological safety is really the big one to explore, and to try to understand how safe people feel sharing particularly unpleasant information.
And I don't understand psychological safety.
So it's the idea. So how safe do people feel in sharing bad news? So is it welcomed, or is it something that's frowned upon, or do you get those sort of visceral reactions where people get criticised or rejected or don't get opportunities when they share bad information? So a really good sort of signal that you've got a reasonably healthy culture is psychological safety. Are people safe? If you have a whistleblower, for example, or somebody who's seen something bad, are they supported? Do leaders engage and welcome that sort of information? Do they have systems and processes in place for dealing with complaints, dealing with near misses, dealing with all of these sorts of things, which really are useful information to help authentic, ethical leaders to fix problems and address issues.
The way that you're unpacking this for me makes me sound like that if I was in the business of having to have someone facilitate how we do things a lot safer, the psychological safety, I love that, whether a whistleblower comes out, will that person be protected or will they be frowned upon? I would be thinking you would be the busiest person in the world. People would be scrambling, scratching at your door to want you to come in to have a talk to them about this. Why aren't you, and I'm not saying that you're not busy, but why aren't you at the stage where you're saying, I need 5 more people to do what I'm doing? right across Australia. What's the barrier there? Why aren't people knocking on your door going, Laurie, come in, we need to have you?
So I do have some very good clients who are supporting me or very keen to improve in that area. I guess I need to improve my marketing. Guess would be my self-reflection and help people understand that these are part of the services that I offer and part of the insights that I offer. And it's probably, there's really two pillars to it. So the psychological safety that I mentioned earlier. The other key ingredient that you need is accountability. Mm-hmm. So people need to be safe, but there also needs to be a level of accountability. And it's that sort of two-pronged approach that if you've got those two ingredients, safety for people to speak up and leaders who are accountable for planning and for performance, it's highly likely you're going to have a strong learning culture if you can have those two ingredients.
Do people see this as a benefit, or do they see this as a liability?
So it's change for people. So often the first reaction is that's different. I haven't been tracked. I haven't been measured before. I haven't been held accountable before. So, we all resist change. So it really is a slowly process of helping people see the benefits of that, helping people see how it can help them. And in some cases, if a leader doesn't want to be accountable, then maybe they need to be sort of nudged towards a role that's more suitable for them.
It's interesting. You've just mentioned a word in there that I also think that you're a facilitator in, which is people need to be open and willing to change. Do you think change management is also playing a big part in people resisting that, hey, we've been doing this for so long now, let's not rock the boat. Yeah. It's working. Yeah. We still got 4 wheels on a motor car. Let's not change it into 6.
Yeah, you're 100% right. So change is happening at a faster and faster rate. So we've got technology advancing, progressing away, our processes are changing. It's the people that's the bottleneck. So helping people change on that journey, helping people resist. I've been doing it that way. Yeah. It's the way we've always done it around here, all that sort of stuff, helping people see the benefits and then guiding them through that process, supporting people to go through the change, because all people resist changing, including you and I.
It's interesting. I had a chat with a gentleman the other day, and we were talking about systems improvement, but then we're also talking a little bit about people improvement. And he said this. He said our brains really haven't changed for hundreds of thousands of years. Yeah. It's obviously we can string sentences together. We've got this technology that we know that we can use. But really, when it comes into a stress form factor, we either still go into fight or flight. We're not used to this prefrontal cortex part of our brain, which is saying, I know how to handle this situation and I know the best thing to do. Why is it, do you think, that we're still using our old brain, our reptilian brain, to deal with the issues in this 2023 region?
Yeah, that's really the key question. So, and that's the psychological safety that I mentioned earlier. So just unpacking that a little bit more. When people feel threatened, or when they feel their reputation's at risk, if they feel they're being picked on, we move out of this sort of conscious, calm, creative thinking to this reptilian sort of flight or fight response, exactly as you say it. And that's really the business case for why we want people to feel safe, why we want people to feel comfortable, that they're not under threat, their job's not at risk if they report an near miss or if there's an issue. So helping people feel safe, helping people feel supported so that they can be in a calm, logical state rather than a more panic state is really a key ingredient.
Yeah. I think one of the things we also spoke about, I'll call him Jeff, it's easier so I know who he is. But what Jeff and I were talking about was that we're also talking about the leadership role. I think leadership's changed a lot. Like there's so many leadership courses that you can go into, and you will learn the things about leaders being people who have willing followers, people who would look at you as having integrity and having wisdom and having coachability. So we look at all those things, and then we get to a stage where you get to the hierarchy, the top of the organization, where they don't have leadership skills anymore. They may be leaders, but they don't show leadership. I think they just turn from leadership into business acumen, which is what's the best for my bottom line. I need to satisfy the stakeholders, not the people. I'll employ people to look after the people, but I'm not going to show leadership qualities. Do you think that is where the barrier might be? Is that the person at the top looks at the business and says, we don't need people capability. What we need is that we need more money. And so if we can shave people to make more money, that would be a better outcome for me and my KPIs Is that a barrier that you're seeing?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and that's the historical way that business has been run and that our economy has worked. So it's really been around financial performance, economic performance, and once again, this is the tremendous value that engineering, the profession of engineering can bring, because engineers have strong obligations towards sustainability. So instead of the financial performance, which is very important, or the economic outcomes, it's about balancing the social outcomes, and the social outcomes includes the internal social outcomes. So in other words, the culture of the organisation, how employees are being supported, as well as the impacts to the broader community, and of course the environmental outcomes as well. So thinking about the future generations and making sure that yes, we're making money, we're financially sustainable, but we're also doing the right thing by our internal and external community. We're also doing the right thing by the environment and reducing our carbon footprint, for example.
I love it how, most of us have, our keywords that we use. Like for yourself, you would have, ethics and leadership and coach and mentor. What would be a byline under that? Like a byline would be something like saving each person from starvation one by one. What would be the engineering byline that you would have that a person picks up and says, this is us, this is what we need?
Oh, an engineering byline. Okay.
Well, like a personal profile for yourself.
For myself?
So some people would say, changing the world, one donut at a time.
So one donut, I'd say, changing the world through successful and sustainable projects.
Right.
So for to me, projects, they really are the way we implement change. So we're either doing business as usual, which means we're just doing what we always do, or we're changing something. And usually the way we change something is through a project. Sometimes it might be called a change initiative, but it's really a project. So if we can become better at delivering projects, then we're going to help society change, we're going to help ourselves change, we're going to help our organisations change. So becoming effective at projects has become more important than ever.
If you were to go back to either any of the organisations that you worked for and you had this opportunity now with the knowledge that you have today, we can always look back and go, if they had done this, we could have changed. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. I work for an organisation called SPHC, Southern Pacific Hotel Corporations. They had 72 hotels and resorts here in Australia. When I was working for them, one of the things I noticed is that their focus was on not customers. So there were hotels and resorts. Their focus wasn't on customers. Their focus was on profit. If you look up Southern Pacific Hotel Corporation today, it's not there anymore. So it's gone belly up. Had I've been back in the day with the knowledge that I have today, and this is now 30 years ago, if I had the knowledge, I would say, how about we just focus on our most important resource, which is our customers. Let's go from there. What do you think, if you were to go back to any of the organisations, what would you say would be a focus for them to be more profitable than what they are, would be something that you would like to have implemented?
Oh, that's a really...
that's a big question.
It is a really tricky one to say. And at business level, I wouldn't claim to be sort of an expert from the business perspective, but certainly in projects. So there's a lot of organisations that I could have helped a lot better if I'd been more skillful with the language that I use. But certainly in projects, there's really there's three simple things that a business can do well to execute a project really effectively. But unfortunately, sometimes companies aren't very well organised, or they don't have much maturity in projects, so things become a little bit haywire. They'll have all sorts of supply chain issues that they're dealing with, different customers who might speak, in a different language or organise things differently. And often organisations struggle to get organised to deliver projects effectively. But certainly what I've learned from, being very lucky to have worked with some excellent companies myself, as well as, having had some pretty good experiences on projects, there's really just three simple things that need to be done well to execute projects efficiently. And they're the same things that existed 10 years ago. And I've got no doubt in 10 years' time, it'll still be those same three things that
and what are they again?
Well, the three things companies need to do really well is firstly, set a baseline. So set an overall target, have a really clear vision for what success is going to look like on the project, and commit to that, sort of lock that in and agree to that. And that includes agreeing to the risk profile, the cost and schedule outcomes associated with that baseline. Very collaborative sort of process. It involves front-end loading, so engaging with a broad range of impacted stakeholders and baking it into a good upfront plan upfront. So that's the first thing. The second thing is having a well thought through process for getting continuous feedback during the execution of the project. So this is informal processes such as meetings and things like that, but also formal structured KPIs and reporting and using data. So really data-driven, as much as possible, data-driven analytics for that continuous feedback process, which requires a culture of safety where we welcome bad news so that we can do something about it. So that's the second ingredient. So it's really that simple. And then the last one is recognizing that just like projects are change initiatives, projects themselves change. So having a really effective change management process on your project where you're continuously monitoring for changes. These can be changes in scope. They may be changes in vendors. They may be changes in budget or schedule. Whatever it is, recognizing in this dynamic world, your baseline plan is supposed to change. So having a nice process in place where you can have a risk-based approach to dealing with potential changes, have a diverse, a multidisciplinary group of stakeholders who can very quickly and effectively make decisions so that decisions that are a good idea, that are an innovation, are welcomed, but we don't just want ad hoc changes or scope creep happening on your projects. So it's really those three simple things. Yeah. It is just so simple.
It is that simple.
But almost all of the projects that fail, particularly public infrastructure projects, really don't get those three simple things in place.
I know you're not going to be able to answer this, but why
why ask it then?
But because I want to see, I want
to
see
you sweat.
I want to see you sweat. I want to see you not answer it. Why do budgets blow out then so much? We have a rail link project, or we have a bus link project, or we have a bridge project. Yeah. And we can see one here in Brisbane. There's a bridge project being put from, I think, the State Library across to the Treasury Casino. There's that new bridge that's going up there. It's going to cost us something like, let's just go $5 billion, but it's going to blow out. We know that to $10 billion. Yeah. Did that happen because, we're going to blame the pandemic again? We're going to blame rising costs of timber and piping, or is it just an inability to be able to scope the project correctly?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and at its simplest level. So if we zoom right out, right from those examples that you've given, but Brisbane's not unique. Around the world, we get particularly large, complex projects, we get them wrong. Yeah. We systematically underestimate the budget, we systematically underestimate the schedule that's required, and we systematically overestimate the benefits. Oh, yeah. So it's called optimism bias, and it's a scientifically proven fact. It's just part of human nature. We've evolved over the thousands of years to be good at, running away from a lion and, hunting and gathering, doing these sorts of things. But we haven't evolved building these complex mega projects with all sorts of systems integration. So we're not naturally tuned into how to do that well. But the solution is, so the two main causes, or the main areas, there's two, or they're summarized in two categories. One is bias, so that optimism bias that I just mentioned, and the other one is noise. And noise is really when we're speaking different languages, we've got inconsistent ways of doing things. So we're not following the 3 steps that I mentioned earlier, for example. So you'll have all sorts of internal transaction costs from, people not organised in a very good way or having different agendas and things like that. So it's the bias and the noise, so the bias is always being sort of optimistic and the noise is sort of random error. It's those two things. And if we can just fix those two things, our projects are going to be better. The way to fix the bias is rely on historical data. So there's that much historical data from past projects. If we just considered that a little bit better, simple tools like statistics in the future or even now, artificial intelligence is high. If we listen to it and if we're open to it, it's highly likely that we're going to drastically improve the way that we're planning and executing projects just by taking benefit of the historical data from previous projects.
I've never heard of optimism bias, but it makes so much sense.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Like to me, it makes something. So you would have coming in here today, you would have had optimism bias. I'm gonna be sitting in here and I'm optimistic about how this is going to end up. Because we don't have lists of questions here. I don't just go, all right, here's the first question I'm going to ask you. It's we go with the flow. But there would have been a certain part of optimism that you would have had, because I rely on two things. I think that we have to be naturally, we have to be inquisitive.
Yeah.
But also I think what humans like is that we love certainty.
Yeah.
We know that we love certainty. I come to a stoplight, it's got red. I know certainty that all the other cars behind me should be stopping.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the part of certainty I have. But we also should have uncertainty. We should know that there are parts of our lives that we're just not sure about. Otherwise, I would put my lotto in tonight and I would be certain that I would win.
Yeah.
So this optimism bias, when you mention that, it sounds rational and logical that my vision for this bridge to be built from one end of the river to the other end of the river is going to be the best. And yet we can see a lot of projects, inner city tunnels, bypasses, that the idea was people are going to be using that and we're going to be making our money back. That's the optimistic side of it. But the reality is people finding it too expensive. They're finding it cumbersome. Now that people are going, okay, it's working, now everyone uses it and there's still traffic jams. Yeah. So and I want to bring it back to, has the pandemic played a major part in people making irrational decisions? Because I'll preface this because every week we're hearing of another construction company falling over. They can't afford it anymore. And we can link that to maybe it was the pandemic, but we're also seeing that the people part of it is saying, well, people don't want to be working anymore. They'd rather be on OnlyFans or TikTok and making a few dollars here or there than having to work in a organisation that's demanding results. So the initial question is, do you think the pandemic has played a major part in how people are thinking?
Well, it certainly played a major part in how people are thinking. And it certainly has put people in a less comfortable place. So that's that calm, rational neocortex thinking, we're more being pushed into emotional reactions or even reptilian type generally speaking. But there's been a lot of changes happening around the pandemic. So here in Queensland, for example, talking about these larger projects, there was around the same time, I think Queensland was putting a bid in for the Olympics. The Queensland Parliament also decided to remove Building Queensland, which is an independent body that provides assurance that projects that the numbers are right, that the projects are likely to deliver social, economic and environmental benefits for the community. So that body was removed. So it sort of gave a little bit more autonomy to the politicians, if you like. So the sort of power of the politicians has increased at the same time. The sort of Olympic Games are being progressed, and and there's a bit of a bullet a gate approach towards that. So I can see that some of the good logical, ethical processes that were in place to help give assurance that what we're doing is going to deliver value, some of those sort of protective mechanisms, I can't see those anymore. So I think there's some of those sorts of factors, and all of that happened during COVID as well. So I can't specifically talk to the pandemic, but I know that there were certainly some changes in governance that happened in Queensland here that sort of lowered the bar in terms of the likelihood that we're going to be doing the right thing for the right reasons, and that the actual costs and schedule of our project are going to match what was in the business case. It's probably less likely than that's going to happen now, rather than what the situation was like before COVID.
Because you do talk a lot about governance as well. Has that? I mean, have you got an example where that's shifted, where that has changed? Like pre-COVID to today?
Yeah, so the best example is the one that I just mentioned. So this Building Queensland, we're an independent statutory body, and these independent statutory bodies are a sign of maturity. So governments around Australia, so most of the states now have one of these bodies, and around the world, countries are improving their maturity and getting better governance around these sort of larger projects in particular, which are notorious for not going so well. So what happened in Queensland was, around the same time we were bidding for the Olympics, this independent body, Building Queensland, got removed. And instead of having an independent body, it's the functions of that group, which is reviewing business cases, sharing information with the public about performance of projects, that's now being handled in-house by the government. So that's an example where the the level of governance and the level of independence, which is good for people and good for project outcomes, has been removed for reasons that aren't really clear. So that's probably an example where it's gone bad. But overall, in Australia, we really are leading the way. So Infrastructure Australia, our Commonwealth independent body, is really world leading and visionary in a lot of the work that they're doing. But here in Queensland, we've probably taken a bit of a step backwards. Yeah.
I noticed that a few other states, New South Wales, Victoria, I'm not too sure about Western Australia, but a few of the states have just got, they're cutting the fat by getting rid of consultants. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's an issue? Do you think that's a problem? And both of us are consultants. Do you think that we should be looking at more of the experts in the field to be able to raise that people capability to be able to get better results? Or do you think they're making better decisions to cut the fat so that we can make the state a lot more profitable?
Yeah, so
it's a balance, isn't it?
It is a balance, and what is really needed is you really need government to be an informed buyer. So you really need internal capability within government. And over the years, particularly in the public sector, the engineering capability within government generally has decreased a lot, which is a real concern. So they go from being, if they have that level, at least a level of expertise in-house, particularly in engineering, then they're more likely to be engaging the right consultants to have the right procurement strategies and things like that. But if you haven't got that engineering capability in-house, then you're less likely to be an informed buyer, and your procurement processes might have all sorts of rationale that may not lead to the best outcomes, particularly for infrastructure projects where you need engineers right at the front end of projects.
So there's obviously a few people that'll be listening to this, and I'm guessing there'd be a lot more engineers that might be listening to this than ballet dancers and
probably a few people.
No, I've been fascinated by this because I think exactly what you're saying is not just categorized into the left part of the brain. I think it's whole brain that needs to happen. But what I probably want to ask is there a clear message that you need to send rather than giving me a thesis and then writing that and giving that to an organisation? But if you had this table talk and somebody said, okay, Laurie, what's the clear message that we need to be sending organisations? What would that be?
The importance of having engineering capability at the top within the leadership, shaping the future. I can't think, if you've got a good, strong engineering leader who has that technical knowledge and that ability combined with that ethical approach, and to have a strong engineering leader at the table, whether it be within your boardroom or within the executive, there's never been a time where it's more important. With the advancement of technology, artificial intelligence, which offers opportunities and threats, climate change issues, so dealing with sustainability issues, as well as general technological advancements, cybersecurity threats, you really need that technical expertise or leadership at the table for your decision making.
Wow, I've loved this. Where can people find you? Because they're scratching, they're banging on their iPads, and they're going, "Where do I find this?" But where do they find you? How can somebody get in contact with you?
So people can reach out to me through my website, Synchrony Projects, or synchrony.net.au. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm very, very open to connect. So just message me on LinkedIn, send me an email. It's all good.
This has been enlightening. Laurie, I thank you for your time. The only thing I am disappointed. I saw you walk in here with the brown paper bag. It's either going to be full of cash, because that's normally, or it's other stuff that we have that's not prohibited. What do we got? I have to ask.
Here we go. Thought I'd bring this for you. Really great talking to you. It's a bottle of Australian whiskey.
Australian whiskey.
Yeah, it's quite new. And it's not too bad either. So good to see Australians are starting to produce whiskey.
So how do we say that? It's 2 RD 3. Well, how do you say that?
It's 23rd Street.
Oh, 20. I'm going to blame it on my eyes. Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah, of course it says 23rd. Because I'm thinking second, it should be ND, and third should be
spelling was never your best suit. It's all right.
Oh, wow. So an Australian single malt whiskey. I thank you for that. And I want to thank you for coming in here, sitting down here and just chewing the fat. Before we go, do you know a person, I won't give him his last name, but do you know Brendan?
Brendan, no.
Brendan N. He's in cybersecurity. No, okay. He's linked with us.
Is he? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
I think he is. So I might get Brendan to sit down here and we can have a chat further about it.
Yep.
Thank you for this. We didn't even drink any of it, but I'm going to drink this on my own.
Is it? Okay. Nice one.
Mate, thanks for coming in.
Yeah. Fun to see you again. Good on you. Thank you, Jill.
You too. Yeah. Everyone else, thanks very much. Bye for now.